What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today talking to you about the Carolina Panthers and our 9th installment in the Fix the Franchise series. We made some good progress, but I'm going to pick this up over the next couple of weeks because we're not too far away from free agency getting underway, which is, an exciting time to be an NFL fan, despite the fact that we're also, staring the last game of the season dead in the face in a couple of days. So sad, but also an exciting time to be an NFL fan. But nonetheless, here to talk about the Panthers. Let me know what moves you would make to fix Carolina this offseason, whether you're a Panthers fan or just a big NFL fan. I'd love to know what moves you're making in free agency. What do you think about the Frank Reich hiring? And then what moves you're making in the draft? And really, the number one question I want to ask you, Panthers fan or not, who do you think is the starting quarterback week 1 of next year for Carolina? To me, that's the biggest storyline around this team. You can kind of jump ahead to the final notes. Love the Frank Reich hire. Now it comes down to who is going to be under center. Whoever that quarterback is, I think that could dictate how good and how scary this team is next season. But let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let's waste no more time. Let's jump into it. 7-10. I think Carolina actually outperformed. It's tough because I think there's a good amount of talent on that roster. Again, it just comes down to they did not have competent quarterback play last year. So 7-10, I think they actually kind of outperformed where I thought they would be. And a big kudos to Steve Wilkes as the interim. Bringing that type of stability, I think that just speaks to Matt Rule is going to be an awesome college coach. Like Nebraska, I think, can turn around pretty quick. To me, he just strikes me as the guy who, 17 to 23-year-olds, he's that rah-rah, can build a program. And also, he's got Phil Snow there as his DC, and I thought Phil Snow was a great NFL DC, so they're going to tear it up there at Nebraska. But nonetheless, just shifting that culture, and you saw the results pretty much immediately. So love the Frank Reich hire because it was kind of that similar mindset. Hey, we got this guy coming up from the college ranks. That didn't work out. Let's go get a guy who has been in the playoffs, won a Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator, played in the NFL, was our first starting quarterback in Panthers history, right, in 95. So it checked so many different boxes. I love that Frank Reich hire. But again, now it comes down to the quarterback. And, that kind of, we'll kind of foreshadow it a little bit. 7 draft picks. I think that is ultimately the route this team will go. I think they want to get that young franchise quarterback versus the veteran market. They have 2 second rounders. One is theirs. One is San Francisco's. They have San Francisco's third. And the reason they don't have theirs third is because they gave that up to get Matt Corral last draft, which, if you're a Matt Corral fan too, I think that's an interesting kind of cog in the mix here. If you believe in him, let me hear it down below in the comment section. I'm not really pinning my hopes on it. I think they can get a better option this year. And then 2 fours. So no 5th, or actually I do think they have a 5th, but no 6th, no 7th for this team, which, I think they have a ton of top 100 assets, those picks on days 1 and 2. And then, I think there's a significant drop off post 4th round. So even having a couple of 4ths I like. So I think this team does have the right amount of draft assets to, one, either potentially move up the draft or literally load up and fill the spots I think this roster does have on it. So the cap space leading us into free agency is kind of where this team gets a little tricky. Over the cap by a little more than $9.5 million. That's 21st in the NFL. So I started to look at what contract, who could get cut, what restructures there are. So Elflein kind of stuck out immediately as the biggest cut, candidate. Save almost $4 million. He was somebody who was signed 2 off seasons ago, I believe. Him and swing tackle from Dallas, whose name is escaping me. I'll try to figure it out. But nonetheless, those were 2 signings that I was like, what, are those really upgrades? Are those truly upgrades to your offensive line? I didn't think they were, and they really didn't play out to be because Elflein wasn't even a starter this year. So yeah, I think you cut him, and I think it's a pretty easy decision. And then we get to Shaq Thompson. This one's way tougher of a call because I love Shaq Thompson. I think I'm as high on Shaq Thompson as anybody out there. I think of him as a high-level athlete who stops the run at a great clip, has coverage upside. I love Shaq Thompson. And still in his late 20s. I don't think he's crossed that 30-year-old mark yet. But man, $24 million cap hit, that is tough. That's a tough number when you're talking about like a Fred Warner, right? Let alone, again, I love Shaq Thompson, but he ain't Fred Warner, But so then you start, okay, do you want to cut him? And you would save about $12 million plus. So that's tempting. That automatically takes you from a deficit up into a surplus. But do you really want to get rid of a good football player? I know Frankie Louvu broke onto the scene last year too, but to me, I'm thinking, man, think about how good Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are as a duo. Imagine if Carolina could have Shaq Thompson and Louisville out there for a full 17 games. I think that middle of the defense would be crazy. I think they could do a lot of cool stuff with that. So I'm hoping they find a way, whether it's a restructure, an extension, something like that. So if you're a Carolina fan in specific, I'd love to hear what you think they do with Shaq Thompson, or just from your perspective. Are you ready to see Louisville just be the guy there in the middle, move on from Thompson, save the money, use it elsewhere, or are you hoping to keep him around, figure out what they can do, restructure, extension, all that sort of stuff? So hope they can keep him around, but The cap hit certainly makes it tricky. And then, so with that said, I think there are moves you can, even beyond Pat Elflein, there's some other moves that they could do, save a couple million here, save a couple million there, but nothing that immediately stands out as like the easiest way to get up and over. But I do think they'll be able to get into a point to be able to spend some money, and some of that's restructures and whatnot. So once they get to that spot, you're gonna have to go cheap. This is not a team that's breaking the bank this offseason. So Ogbenaya Okoronkwo is an edge rusher, because to me, edge 2 opposite Brian Burns, and then cornerback 2 opposite of J.C. Horn. You already have superstars at that that other end edge spot, and then that other cornerback spot. So can we find someone who's competent on the other side? Ogbenaya Okoronkwo was somebody I was excited that Houston signed last year. Saw some upside. Didn't have a huge sample size to pull from when he was with the Rams, but when he played, he was pretty effective. Now, granted, that's on a defensive line that had Leonard Floyd playing a little bit better a couple years ago, and Aaron Donald was still the best defensive player in the league, so he had some help. But this year at Houston, he got off to a quiet start, but then down the stretch, like the last 4 games, had a pretty high pass rush win rate, still in his mid-20s. I think he'll be 27 midway through next year, so I think there's still some upside to play into. And again, someone with that big body strength profile, if you've been around the channel, I've been looking for them to basically take another swing of the bat at Yetur Gross-Matos. I want a big physical edge rusher on the other side of Brian Burns, because Burns is much more that smaller speed finesse rush type that also struggles against the run. So I feel like you need a big physical kind of tone setting, edge setting type of guy there on the other side. So Ogbenaya Okoronkwo, I think, can give you that. And then cheap cornerback options. And really here, I'm just looking for somebody who's solid. So even if it's a Troy Hill, who's 31, and be 32 by midway next year, I'm fine with it. At this point, J.C. Horn's a stud. So, just give me someone who's okay on the other side. It's kind of similar to what I think the Falcons were trying to do last offseason, where it's like A.J. Terrell is a headline corner. That side of the field is taken care of. Casey Hayward, be okay, be serviceable, be solid as a number 2 guy. So if Carolina could do something similar, whether it's a Troy Hill, Greedy Williams, who's only 25 and going to turn 26 next year, that's a player who I think actually has played pretty well the last couple of years with the Browns. And, I think MJ Emerson basically kind of took his starting spot. Denzel Ward's already making a ton of money. I don't think Cleveland brings it back. So I think that's a young starting level potential corner out there on the market that I don't know what his demand is. I could see a lot of other teams selling themselves from Greedy Williams, so maybe he makes too much to where he's priced out of Carolina's budget. But I could also see him kind of going under the radar, and they get him for cheap. So I'd love to see that. If not that, Emmanuel Mosley. Again, a guy who's in his mid to late 20s, I think 26, turning 27, and played good football with San Francisco. Injuries have been a concern, which is a little tricky because you already have some guys like that in the secondary, so not ideal. But, man, if Mosley could stay healthy, I think you would have more than competent cornerback 2 play. So trying to find some cheap options. Again, these are not headline players, so sorry if you're a Panthers fan looking for me to throw out these big names. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to make all these crazy moves. No, not really. I think free agency, it's about filling those little bit of holes if you can. Again, it comes down to the cap space and how much flexibility you give yourself. And then the draft is where you make the big moves. So segueing into that, to me, you got to do whatever you got to do to get that quarterback 1. Yeah, whoever that is on your board, whether it's Levis, Stroud, Young, or Anthony Richardson, however you see it, get that guy. I think this team has the draft capital to be able to make a move up to 1. I'm not sure Chicago would prefer 9 over 4. I think that's kind of the holdup there, where they might get more assets from Carolina, but then it's like, okay, at 9, or we're going to get a Tyree Wilson maybe, or we could draft a Peter Skoronski. Okay. Well, if we trade with Indianapolis, go to 4, we're getting Carter or Anderson. So 4 versus 9 is kind of tricky. But also in my last mock, I had them moving up to 3. And Arizona getting a couple extra second-round picks. A lot of Cardinals fans liked it. A lot of Cardinals fans didn't. So if you're a Panthers fan, let me know what you would ultimately do. I've also had Panthers fans who, when I make those trades up, they're like, no, why would you do that? Don't give up those picks. Like, we're fine where we are. So I don't think Stroud makes it to 9. So that's part of why I end up making those trades. To me, I see 3 quarterbacks going to the top 5, and that's Young, Stroud, and Levis, in some combination of some order of those 3. And then to me, if you stick at 9, then Anthony Richardson's your guy. Which even then, Vegas could take him at 7. Atlanta, maybe if they want to be ballsy, could take him at 8. It's not a surefire thing. Washington maybe could play it bold and move up. I don't know. So I feel like the team's got to make a move of some kind. Maybe it's with Detroit at 6. Maybe that's like the safest way to go about it. Whether it's 1, 3, or 6, I think they're going to have to make a move up. But however and wherever you end up, get your quarterback 1. I've been doing Levis. I've done Richardson. I've had this team move up to get Bryce Young at 1. So it comes down to whatever they're saying in that room. I'm not in that room, so I don't know. But whoever that quarterback 1 is, that's what this rebuild comes down to. Because if you get the quarterback right, and I love the Frank Reich hire, as stated in my final notes, I think this team can be scary. I think they can legitimately make a push for the division. Now, granted, you're going to need that quarterback to be pretty good right away, but I look at two running backs in the backfield that are young, played well at the end of last year. The offensive line's up and coming. Kim Aquanu, big hit from last year. I like the wide receivers. I'm still a big Laviska Shenault fan, so maybe I'm holding on to my bias. Loved him coming out of Colorado. I think DJ Moore is a bona fide wide receiver one, so I think that rookie quarterback's stepping into a pretty good spot. And, I'm talking about Shaq Thompson. I'm talking about Frankie Louvu. I'm talking about J.C. Horn. That defense has talent. Brian Burns. I mean, that defense has pieces to work with. So, again, I think if you get the quarterback right, position yourself wherever you need to get that guy. And it's always tricky when trading assets, right? You want more swings to the bat versus less. Quantity versus quality is hard to quantify in the NFL draft, but a lot of times quantity wins out. But when it's for the quarterback, trying to get that QB of the future, I think I'll give you the green light here. Now, if you're moving up to draft a safety or a linebacker, that's a harder sell. But for quarterback, I can let it go. But anyways, moving on to the next bullet point, this also comes down to how many picks they give up, right? If they move up to number one, they're giving up this year's first, next year's first, both seconds this year. Then this next bullet point becomes a little bit harder. But assuming they do still have some of those top 100 assets, maybe one of the seconds, the third from San Francisco, one of the 2-4, something like that. I think this is a deep class at both edge and corner. To me, corner is the most, I think that's the best position group in this draft class. But I think there's a lot of depth for the edge class as well. So if you miss out in free agency, you can't get an Okoronkwo, you can't get a Greedy Williams or whoever they're targeting at those positions. I think this is a draft class uniquely gifted to be able to give them somebody who can, at least push your Gross Matos, maybe even supersede and give you a little bit of an upgrade there at that other edge spot, or give CJ Henderson a push, or supersede Henderson as that number 2 corner. So I think there's depth there. I think that's kind of the route I would go, somewhere there in the top 100. And then beyond that, I'd love to see them add a true free safety. If Brandon Joseph fell enough, oh my God, I'd be totally here for that. Then Jeremy Chin kind of continues to play that nickel corner, box safety role, kind of like Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore, kind of like what Brian Branch is going to do once he finds his team and he's drafted this April. I think that's a role he can thrive in, but getting that true over the top free safety, that ball hawk type, I think would go a long way and just make that secondary that much more scary. You already have to face J.C. Horn. Now you got a true guy who can cover the entire field over the top. Again, that just makes that defense that much scarier. Plus, hopefully a good pass rush boost with another guy opposite of Burns. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for the draft. You could maybe add some offensive line depth. Linebacker could become something they address if they move on from Shaq Thompson. So plenty of different routes they could go down. But again, ultimately, this comes down to the quarterback. I think they nailed the head coaching hire. If they nail the quarterback, drafting, however it plays out, maybe even if it is a veteran, if they nail whoever that quarterback is, I think this team can win the division next year because, Tampa's in turmoil. The Saints, who knows? If they get Carr, they'll probably be fine, but that's no guarantee. And then you get Atlanta, who this will come down to Desmond Ridder, right? Like, they'll go as Desmond Ridder goes. So, again, big upgrade here. This team could very well be the front runner for the NFC South next year. So I'm really excited. And I was kind of low on the Panthers this past year, but now I'm starting to get really excited. Again, a lot of that comes from Frank Reich. I'm a big Frank Reich guy. So let me know what you would do, again, to fix the Carolina Panthers. What do you think they can do to free up some cap space, make some moves in free agency? Do you like the names I threw out? And then ultimately, the draft. Do you think they're going quarterback? Do you think they move up? Do you think they stick and pick at 9? What do they do on day 2s and 3? Love to hear your thoughts, especially if you're a Carolina fan. So let me hear your opinions down below in the comment section. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. If you're new around here, want to see more football content, more draft coverage, just hit that big red subscribe button. But until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.